The wedding wasn't large. No long guest list, no dramatic entrance, no pressure to impress anyone beyond the people who mattered. They chose a small venue just outside the city, surrounded by trees and open sky, a place that felt calm the moment you arrived. It was the kind of space where conversations could happen without microphones and laughter didn't need permission. The morning began slowly. She woke early, not from nerves, but from excitement that felt steady instead of sharp. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, soft and patient. The dress hung quietly nearby, simple and elegant, chosen not to stand out but to feel right. She touched the fabric once, then moved away, letting the day unfold without rushing it. He, in another room, adjusted his jacket more times than necessary, smiling to himself, replaying moments from years before when commitment felt abstract and now felt solid. Guests arrived gradually, greeting each other like they had all agreed to leave urgency behind for the day. Friends hugged longer. Parents watched closely, not out of worry, but recognition. This wasn't a performance. It was a transition. When the ceremony began, there was no dramatic silence, just attention. They stood facing each other, hands steady, eyes clear. Vows weren't perfect. Words stumbled slightly, voices softened, but the meaning landed fully. This wasn't about promises that sounded good. It was about choosing each other in ordinary moments yet to come. Afterward, the celebration felt more like a gathering than an event. Tables filled with shared dishes, stories overlapping, glasses raised without formal toasts. Music played quietly enough to allow conversation, loud enough to invite movement. People danced without choreography, laughed without schedule. The couple moved through it all together, checking in with glances, hands brushing, presence constant even when they weren't side by side. As evening settled, lights strung between trees glowed warmer. The air cooled. Conversations deepened. She noticed how he listened to her family with care, how he laughed with her friends as if he had always belonged there. He noticed how comfortable she looked, unposed, grounded, fully herself. The wedding didn't change who they were. It revealed them more clearly. Later, when most guests had left and the space grew quiet again, they sat together on the steps, shoes off, jackets draped nearby. The day felt full but not overwhelming. He said it didn't feel like an ending. She agreed. It felt like a place to begin from. Not loudly. Not perfectly. Just honestly. That was what made the wedding unforgettable. Not the photos, not the details, not the timing. It was the feeling that this commitment wasn't about one day at all. It was about building a life that felt like this moment, warm, intentional, and deeply familiar. A home made not of walls or rituals, but of choosing each other, again and again, in ways that never needed applause. In the weeks after the wedding, life returned quietly, without ceremony. There was no sudden shift, no dramatic sense of now everything is different. Instead, there was a gentle continuity, like a familiar song playing in another room. They woke up the next morning tired but calm, coffee brewed the same way, sunlight landing on the same kitchen counter. The only difference was subtle and steady, the feeling that they were moving forward from the same place now. They unpacked gifts slowly, not because they were busy, but because there was no rush. Notes from friends were read aloud, sometimes laughed at, sometimes set aside to be reread later. The wedding photos arrived a few days after, and they looked through them together on the couch, pointing out small moments they hadn't noticed while the day was happening. A shared smile. A hand reaching instinctively. A look that said we're okay without words. Those were the images that mattered most. Marriage settled into their routine naturally. Decisions felt more deliberate, but not heavier. They argued sometimes, about small things, about timing, about plans, but the arguments didn't feel threatening. They ended sooner, softened by the understanding that neither was going anywhere. Commitment didn't remove friction. It gave it context. They learned to pause, to listen past their first reaction, to return to the conversation when emotions cooled. The wedding hadn't taught them how to be perfect together. It reminded them why they were willing to keep learning. Friends asked if it felt different now, if being married changed everything. They struggled to answer that question clearly. It didn't feel like a transformation. It felt like alignment. Like two lives that had already been walking in the same direction had finally agreed on the map. The wedding wasn't a peak. It was a marker along a longer road. Some evenings, they talked about the future in practical ways: work, travel, responsibilities. Other nights, they said nothing at all, sharing space comfortably, the way people do when silence doesn't need explanation. That ease was the truest result of the wedding. Not excitement that faded, but steadiness that stayed. Months later, passing the venue again by chance, they slowed the car and looked at it briefly. It didn't pull them backward into nostalgia. It grounded them in gratitude. The day had given them something valuable, not because it was perfect, but because it reflected who they already were, people choosing each other with intention, without spectacle. The wedding hadn't been about beginning love. It had been about recognizing it. And every day after, in ways both ordinary and meaningful, they continued doing the same thing, coming home to each other, quietly, confidently, as if that choice had always been the most natural one.